Hi, everyone. Today we will be interviewing my friend Anne, who is in France right now. She has an exciting new exhibition at the International Quilt Museum, and she's going to give us a presentation on that. Welcome, Anne.
Well, thank you. Hello. I'm very happy to have been invited to present you this textile talk. It's going to be about this new series of mine, which deals with my representation of music in art quilting. So, uh, first, I will tell you a little about my geographical and artistic environment. Then I will give you a few basic elements about Johann Sebastian Bach. And finally, in the third part, I will try to show you how I dealt with this transposition of music into visual art.
Okay.
Next.
All right. I will share my screen and then I'm going to enlarge the presentation. And does it look good from your end?
Yes, it looks fine. So it
Okay.
should be already number 3. So
Okay.
that's it. So I'm French. I live in the city of Nantes in Brittany. That's Western France, near or on the Atlantic coast. Latitude, if you look at the map, latitude 47th parallel, which is to be compared to Quebec, so quite more north than any of the American East Coast cities, but fortunately far from as cold as Quebec, thanks to the Gulf Stream. Next. Nantes is one of the top 10 big French cities with a conurbation of nearly 700,000 inhabitants. Well, it's not a small city, but it's not a gigantic one either. When we cross this city on foot, we can walk the whole thing within half an hour. Next. Nantes, as you can see on the map, is at the mouth of the Loire River. And so in blue, this is the Loire, the longest French river, about 700 miles. Well, of course, you cannot compete it with the Mississippi or the Missouri, but France is not as big as the USA either. So next, many of you know the Loire by name because of the numerous ancient castles, such as, well, Chenonceau here, next, Amboise or Chambord, next. And this is in Nantes where it starts, the Loire starts its journey. So at the mouth of the river, it's a long, big mouth. The Atlantic is about 30 miles from here. Next. Now I will give you a few history elements for you to understand the background. So until the Renaissance, and I mean around 1500, Brittany was an independent kingdom, and Anne de Bretagne, you can see her statue here, she became the queen after her father's death. Now, the King of France had his eye on the province of Brittany, because if you remember history, salt in those days was called the white gold. It was extremely precious. And Brittany was the main producer and the main trader of salt in all of Europe, not only France, but Europe. So the French king wanted to take it over. And using blackmail, he succeeded in forcing her to marry him. So she became Queen of Brittany and France. But of course, Brittany was part of the dowry as stipulated in the contract. And when she died, it lost its independence and became a French province. So Brittany has been French since around 1500. Next. This is the same statue, but seen from nearer. Next. And this is her castle. I mean, the castle of the kings of Brittany before it became part of France. It's right in the middle of the city, and it's very nice to be visited, and there are exhibits, and it's a nice place. Next. Now, the castle is one of the most important features of the city, but the cathedral is as well. In France, you know, we have a cathedral in almost every city or town. So most were built between the 12th and 14th century. And in the past, the cathedral was not only the geographical and religious center of a city, it was also the center of cultural life. So now, just go, there are a couple of other pictures of the cathedral seen from different points of view. So next. Yeah, just in front. This is me now from a roof. It's a beautiful place. It burnt the same year that Notre Dame burnt in Paris, but they just reopened it. Next. Yeah, and in winter. Next. Now, this is not a cathedral. This is the place where I live with my husband in the very center of the city, in an apartment building on the fourth and last floor. That was my choice because I wanted to have enough light to work. Next. So on the fourth floor, this is my workspace. It's hard to call it a studio. It's only 90 square feet. It's very small, but it is mine. And I can drop as many pins as I want without having my husband bickering. And I rejoice going there every morning to work with fabrics and colors. I even have a tiny sink, and this enables me to dye the sheets and tablecloth that I inherited from my ancestors, from my great grandmother, and from my grandmother's dowry. Next. Well, so as you can imagine, this is another shot. There is the cutting table is on rollers so that I can access the fabrics. It's so tiny that there's no passage if I don't roll the cutting table. So as you can imagine, I have to be very organized to manage this small amount of square feet. And because of the lack of space, I cannot make very large quilts. Unfortunately. Well, 48 inches high and 40 wide are the biggest sizes I have coped with. Next. And next. So in my professional life, I taught languages in various European countries, but now I am retired. This is not Nantes, you can imagine. In 2015, my husband and I walked across France on long hiking trails, and we crossed from west to east. We walked from Nantes to Switzerland, the Swiss border, which means 700 miles from the Atlantic to the Swiss border. And at some point in the middle of the hike, we were hosted by a woman who made beautiful patchwork bedspreads. Now, I have to give you a piece of information. You may not know that art quilting is not really known in France. It is not something coming from, it's not our tradition. The French textile tradition encompasses several domains like lace making, embroidery, fashion, but fiber art is not really considered art. At best, it is a craft. At worst, it's patchwork for old women. So this was, well, discovering these patchwork bedspreads, beautiful, was absolutely new to me. And for some reason, I don't know why, I just got hooked. And when we went back home, I started looking for classes in order to learn. And I made a couple of bedspreads for my family. But then I quickly realized that I was not interested in implementing a pattern as beautiful as traditional patchwork, maybe. Uh, in fact, I discovered I was interested in the creative process. And that's when I discovered art quilting, and it quickly developed into a total passion. So now my life is devoted to dyeing my own fabrics, sketching, cutting, sewing, creating, trying on the design wall, very tiny, but still it's a design wall, and quilting. And of course, I go on at least twice a year on hiking with my husband in such landscape as you can see on this picture. Next. I started very quickly to work in series because I like developing a concept. I like trying out various colors and shapes on the same theme. You can see that was 2020, and I made that rainbow series. So the pattern is exactly the same. I mean, the design, but I tried all the colors alone or in complementary patterns. There were 12 of these. After a couple of series, well, I had rainbow, then next then I made in 2021, I made another series called Window Views. As you can see, it's neither really figurative nor completely abstract. You can imagine, or it's just suggesting landscapes or emotions. Next, then that same year, I made another series called Each Their Own View. There were about 35 of these, and they're mounted on canvases. Next. Then in 2022, I started a series called Integration in Neighborhoods. Made probably about 15 of them, not the same sizes, all of them. Interesting, though. And then next, that's when I started my first really important for me series, and that was the Cathedral series. The two you see here, there were 12 of them, but the two you see have been exhibited or even selected for global SAQA global exhibits and are currently in the United States shown somewhere. I don't remember well where. And it was also shown, the 12 of them before they left for the States were shown in Nantes. It was a first art quilt exhibit last year. Next. Then I still had another exhibit called From River to Ocean, about 25 quilts. They were shown first in Delaware and then in Eastern France at the European Patchwork Meeting that was last fall. So again, landscapes, but not really landscapes. You can imagine, the viewer can imagine what they want next. Another couple of them. And that was last fall. So at the end or in the fall 2024, I was free to start another series next. And here comes Johann Sebastian Bach and this collection of 32 pieces that you can see on exhibit at IQM. So before starting to talk about my collection, I need to tell you a couple of things about Johann Sebastian Bach, uh, because not everyone knows this composer. Of course, you know the name and you know a couple of his music, like the Brandenburg concertos, for example, but I want to tell you a couple of more things. He came from a family of very well-known musicians in Eastern Germany. I think, I haven't counted, but there are about 30 or even more members of his family, going back to his great-grandfather, his uncles, his siblings, the whole family. They were all musicians or in music somewhere. He was very prolific, but a very humble composer. You will see this at the end of my talk. Extremely competent in various fields related to music, but still, for example, at 17, he was already a master at repairing organs, these big music instruments. At 17, he was called from all over Germany to repair them. Can you imagine that? He could compose, he could improvise, he could teach, he could direct choirs, he could direct orchestras. So he was very well respected, yet he was totally underappreciated in his time and not popular outside of Germany. Like if you compare with Handel, who was born in the same year and died pretty much at the same time and came from a couple of a dozen miles away from Bach, so also a German, who lived in the UK, in the United Kingdom, and he was well known all over Europe, Handel, and he was really a much bigger deal. But time did well to Bach, and his music has really become a bedrock of classical music. And it seems to rise to a spiritual altitude that no other music does. And that's why he's so much praised these days. These are portraits of the composer, the one on the left when he was younger, and on the right at the end of his life. He died at 65 and was born in 1685. Next. Well, I'm not a real musician. I mean, a professional one, but I am a choir singer, and I have sung in a chamber choir for half a century. Yes, I'm not that young. It goes that far back in the past. Mostly sacred music. So I have had time to sing pretty much all of the choir music that Johann Sebastian Bach wrote, from the motets, the masses, the Magnificat, Matthew's Passion, John's Passion, and else. Next, for a couple of years, I've had this urge to translate, to interpret one of Bach's works that is very dear to my heart into fabric and color. It's not something I have sung because it was written for harpsichord, but well, it's called the Goldberg Variations. It was composed in 1741. Bach was in his mid-50s, more or less. And now it is played, it was written for the harpsichord, but now it's also played for the piano. Remember that the piano we have now had not been invented yet in Bach's time. So I knew it would be a tremendous challenge because it is composed of 32 pieces, 32 variations, which means I had to make 32 quilts. It starts with an aria, which develops into 30 variations, and it ends with the same aria, which is both the same as far as the score is concerned, but quite different when played. I'll get back to the reason why later. Next. Normally, musical variations are structured this way. That's what I try to write. Uh, uh, a main tune, usually not very long, then about 7 to 10, quote, repeats, unquote, which are not identical, but take the original tune, cut it, and twist it around. So you may have a variation in melody, in rhythm, in harmony, in tempo. Many composers wrote variations. Mozart did, Haydn, Beethoven, Schubert, Mendelssohn, Brahms, Paganini for the most famous, but many others did as well. Next. But Bach wrote something very singular, something that no other one did. The only constant between all 30 variations is the bass line, and you can see it here. The melody changes from one variation to the other. The rhythm changes, the mood, all three, and you get 30 totally different worlds, as if they were not the same work. Some are dances, some are full of excitement, others float above the ground. You can listen to the purest joy or the most tragic grief. Now, my personal, very personal interpretation is that the whole work is an epitome of human life, starting with birth, the aria, and closing the cycle of life with the repeat of the aria. I will come back to this later. Next. Now, it is a challenge for the artist, not only because of the number of pieces of the collection, but also because music encompasses, I'm sorry, this slide shows with the green circles the bass line. And you can see that above, it's just something else that has nothing to do with it. Of course, it's harmonious, but it is another world. Next slide. Same thing, it's another variation. Again, the line above is totally independent, and then in green, you have the bass line. So that when a musician listens to it, he will hear the bass line. When you or I listen to it, we can hardly perceive that there is a bass line. I mean, a recurrent bass line. And that's why it is so incredible that Bach could write that. So next now. So I was saying it is a challenge for the artist, not only because of the number of pieces, but because music encompasses 4 parameters. Well, a melody, of course, a certain rhythm, a certain mood, a certain structure, and this is true for any piece of music, not only for for Bach, and not only for classical music. It's always like that. But Bach, being a musical architect, adds a 5th parameter to these 4, an intricate architecture of the whole piece, which one doesn't really see unless one is a very good professional musician. Just like we will not see the foundation and the basement of a building, but it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. An architect will see it. So turning the music into visual arts meant I had to grapple and to translate each of these 5 parameters And this is how I proceeded. Next. The melody has to do with movement, right? Ascending scales, mixed directions, cyclic waves. This I try to translate with lines. Next. As far as tempo, well, rhythm is concerned, I could create a lot of small, even tiny shapes to give an impression of more dynamic movement, or on the contrary, big shapes to imply a slower flow. And that's what you can see here, a slow one and a fast one. Next. For the mood, it was quite easy. Major keys always sound much happier than minor keys, and I could differentiate them using bright open colors versus darker, heavier ones. And this you can see here, the different mood between these two variations. Next. Look at these 4 happy, vibrant ones. Next. And then at those 3, the only ones written in a minor key from the whole 30 variations. And you can see that the atmosphere is quite different from the previous slide. Next. What I had most to think about was the structure. The individual structure of each of the 32 pieces, you can see on the left of the slide, and also the overall structure of the whole work. So the individual one you can see on the left, as individuals, each of these variations is composed of 32 measures of 4 lines of 8 measures each. 4 lines of 8 measures. It was not very easy to keep to 32 pieces of fabric or to 4 lines of 8 pieces. It would have been terribly boring, but I tried my best to render an impression of this similarity of structure within the 30 pieces, individual pieces. Now, about the structure of the whole work, the overall structure, it's on the right. There are 3 sets of 10 variations each, like a building of 3 stories, if you want. They come in a rhythm of 3. In the first set, that is every 3rd variation, number 1, number 4, number 7, 10, 13, etc., is a dance. For example, there is a polka, there is a minuet, there is a jig, a saraband. Well, these are the dances that were danced in those days. The second set, well, number 2, 5, 8, 11, etc., are all arabesques, extremely virtuoso, quick pieces. They are so hard to play that even soloists have a hard time with them. And the third set, all multiples of 3, 3, 6, 9, 12, etc., are all canons. Next. Here is the first set, the dances. In those days, they were often danced in circles. And this is what I try to convey with a circular shape around the piece. So 8 pieces, no, 10 pieces, yes. Next. Here is the second set, the virtuoso pieces. I stressed the horizontal pattern, the stripes, to convey the flow, the speed, the movement. It's going forward. They are much more linear than circular. Next. That's the third set of the canons. Well, a canon, you probably all know what it means. It means there are two voices which sing the very same melody, but one after the other. And that's why for those numbers, I chose this sort of stained glass look with two colors to hint at the two voices. Well, in some of them, like the first one, for example, you can see the voices, um, the voices complete each other, understand each other. In others, like in number 9, for example, here, you can see they clash or they contradict or they intersect, depending what each of the voices has to say or to compromise with the other. Next. Last but not least, I wondered how I could render the whole structure of the work. Bach started with an aria, the one on the left, and ended the work with the very same one, as if he was closing a circle. Except that, as I mentioned before, the final aria is never played by pianists in the same way. They play different accents on different notes, for example. They don't play it in the same rhythm. They give an altogether different feel to the final closing aria. The way I interpret this is the following. I see the Goldberg variation, as I said before, as a metaphor for human life. When you start the journey, when you're born, you're a certain person. Then you travel in your life. You go through many different experiences, influences. You meet different people in different situations. And when you get to the end of your life, you are both the same person, same name, same body, but in a way, a different one, not exactly the same shape, not exactly the same color of hair, because of your accumulated experience. Normally, you have more poise, more wisdom, more understanding, hopefully more stability. And that's what I tried to show. If you look at the two arias, the one on the left, the first one, is kind of very simple. I would say nearly simplistic. But if you look at the final closing one, you can see that it's much more intricately constructed, and that although it's the same pattern, the same shapes, the same palette, it's much more complex, isn't it? It is more of one conveying original simplicity. If you think that in most other composers' variations, the last variation is always a sort of firework. And Bach did not mean that. He meant original simplicity, completing the circle as if it was the circle of eternity. My visual interpretation of this closing aria I like very much. I find it very successful. Next. Bach never signed his work with his own name. Can you believe that? Or at least not with his name first. As I said before, if you remember, he was very humble. I read somewhere that we have only one manuscript from the hundreds and thousands that he wrote where his name appears after the last line. All the rest, all of them, he signed with the 3 letters SDG, as you can see here on the slide, which in Latin means glory to God alone. This was his signature. So glory to God, and eventually Johann Sebastian Bach after that. Next. I wanted to give you that quote. He wrote in one of his letters, "I'm playing the notes, but God makes the music." And it's so much. It represents Bach so much. It just blew my mind when I read that. So next, for my 32 quilts, I had to find a signature that would hint at that. A sort of humility, but something you still have to see. So you may notice that in each of the pieces, there is a quilted circle. You can, well, two examples. There's the same size, the same design, not the same colors, depending on what quilt they are on. And they're not always in the same spot or in the same corner of the piece. I tried to make it visible, so not too small, but not conspicuous because it's not the focal point, obviously. Next. Now, if you look more closely, and I tried to circle it with black or white, so because the slides are not good enough from, I mean, so tiny pictures, you will see that these circles draw a virtual melodic line when you pass from one variation to the next. With the initial aria, the circle is in the left upper corner, and at the end of the journey, in the final aria, it is in the right lower corner, and in between, it goes down and upwards so that it can hint at a melody. Next. Well, for the fun of it, I just wanted to show that I incorporated a piece of my family linen, which I dyed, and it bore the same initials as Johann Sebastian Bach. I mean, it's pure luck. One of my great aunts' name was Jeanne Biard, J.B., and I thought it's perfect for Bach, so I'm going to kind of hide it in one of the quilts, and that it's number 7, and it has his initials. Next. I have worked on this since October 2024, so roughly about a year. I have not made any other quilt during that period of time. Nothing else but these 32, I mean. I was very focused on this series, and I probably listened, I would say, at least 1,000 times to the Goldberg variations in those, well, 9-10 months. All the possible interpretations by different musicians of the Goldberg variations. I probably have them in my dreams. And well, I was very happy when I received the invitation of the International Quilt Museum. I attended the opening in early September. I brought the quilts, and the exhibit will remain there until February 7, I was told. So you can pay a visit, see the pieces in person. Each piece has a QR code linked to the musical variation it represents. So you can even listen to the music while looking at the quilt. It's a tremendous experience. I advise you to do so. Next year, it will be seen in Germany and in the Czech Republic, and I hope it can also be seen displayed in France. It'll be difficult in France, but perhaps in Italy and in Great Britain. And I dream of showing it in Asia sometime. So if you know of anybody who could help implement this dream, please let me know. Next. Thank you very much for listening. And if you have any questions, I'll try to answer them. I have a website and an Instagram page. Thank you. So, Lindy,
Yes. Okay, so I'm going to stop the share and then I'm going to ask a few questions.
okay.
Okay, so some of these you touched on a little bit, but I kind of wanted either more explanation or if you feel like you've already addressed it enough, that's okay too. So one of my questions, and I like that you said the Goldberg variations reminded you of phases of the human life. Was there any other reason that you chose this as opposed to a different type of music?
Well, it's a sort of, well, this particular work, I kind of bled with listening to it, with family happenings, and so it is for me the very core of the music that can touch someone. And that's why I thought, if I'm going, as an artist, I'm going to try to get across what is very deep in my heart. Not that I don't like other pieces of music, but this particular one is special, not well known enough.
Okay, another question I have is for the forms and the colors, how did you choose those as you were listening?
It's the part that was the easiest. I mean, the
Okay.
color, I listened to it and then went to my shelves, which you can see behind, and sort at this one, this one, this one, that one, that one. Yes, that's it. So the
Awesome.
colors were absolutely obvious. Sometimes I added a little piece of something else, or I retrieved something, but mostly I knew. I mean, from the mood of when you listen to it, you know if it's total grief or if it's total pure joy. And then, I mean, if it's pure grief, you cannot take reds. And if it's pure joy, you're going to take like yellows and reds and, enthusiasm cannot be blue. When you
Awesome.
say, I'm feeling blue, you know why you're using the word blue.
Mhm.
It does represent something in the human soul that's very uh, very deep, let's say.
What why did you make the opening so when I look at it in the gallery, the opening aria piece and the closing are bigger than the
Yes.
other pieces. So can you explain that decision?
Very good question. I didn't explain it. Well, for me, it was like a tribute to these two arias because they are the opening and closing pieces, and also they're not a variation, they are the start and the end. So it's like, in a film, you see the end and it's big, and that's what I wanted. So just a sort of homage.
When did you discover Bach's music?
Oh, I already have memories of my father playing one of the Brandenburg concertos when I must have been like 4 because we had not moved yet. So we moved when I was 5. So it was before I was 5. And I still have this music. And then when I started singing, when I was a young woman, let's say I started when I was 19, 20, and I went directly into, I mean, the choir I was singing with started with Bach, and it was very obvious then.
Um, how does the process of translating music into a visual form work for you? And you talked a little bit about this, but I guess with the process, do you sketch every piece before you decide to start to create? Or do you like listen to the music as you're quilting? Like, what is kind of the process as you're creating?
Both, Lindy. Well, I did sketch for each of the 3 sets. I sketched because I wanted to make a difference between these 3 sets, the ones that are the dances with a round kind of shape, circular shape, I sketched that as opposed to the linear ones, but I didn't sketch each of them. I just sketched three models, so to speak, and then went from that on. And the second part of your question, I kept listening to it all day. I think for a whole year, I had mostly Bach, not only, but mostly, especially when I was creating. When I was quilting, it was a different, it's much more technical. So you don't, it's not as important. But for the creative part, I was totally immersed in the music.
So the Goldberg variations, I did a little bit of research, 283 years old. How do you feel like it connects with contemporary artists or contemporary audiences?
Well, because of this metaphor of human life that I felt, I think it's universal. It doesn't have any age. I mean, of
Mm,
course, the harpsichord is an kind of not a very modern instrument. The piano is. Uh, I think it doesn't date. I mean,
mm.
when you have something that's so deep in the core of the human soul, it doesn't. You cannot date it really.
Do you have any other quilting projects in mind that are related to music?
My new series is so
Okay, what is
yes.
that?
Well, a sort of gallery, a musical gallery of various composers. This time it will be one quilt per composer,
Okay.
not 32 of the same work. So I go
Mhm.
like reverse now. I'll probably have 25 or 30 pieces, but each will be devoted to one specific composer. I've already started, I already have like 6 or 7 of them.
Oh,
So
wonderful. Exciting.
it's, and I'm listening to music all the time. And this time it's going to start in the Shakespeare's time, well, a bit before, and it's going to go all the way to today and to the,
Wonderful.
well, modern composers, contemporary composers.
So, did you listen to any other music besides Bach when you were making this?
Yes, for shift, as I said, not during the creative part, because I wanted to be one with the music and really express what I heard and not be diverted to any other kind of music. But I had to take a break once in a while, and I could listen to many other composers. I must say, I do not really listen to uh, I listen mostly to what you would call classical music, even if it's contemporary, uh, like, what you hear on the radios, like songs, and I'm not really interested in that, at least not to transmit. I could listen to that, but uh, I need the music, not necessarily the words.
And then one thing you mentioned as I was looking at your studio space is you had talked about dyeing fabrics. Do you leave your studio space to go do that somewhere else so you have more
No,
room?
no, it's right in that corner. It's
Oh, wow.
about it's 20 inches by 15 inches. It's a very
Okay.
small piece, but there is water, and I make do.
Yeah.
Lindy, because I don't have any other choice. So of course, when
Yeah.
I have a dying week, I do it like a week at a time, because then I have to uh, leave the whole. You see, this cutting table has to be totally empty, and I have to put a lot of protection everywhere, and I have to be 300% organized on my cutting table so that I'm not going to make a mess and so that I can get all the colors I need. For printing, it's more complicated because I would need more space. I don't have it. So
Mm.
that's life.
And are you self-taught in dyeing fabrics, or how
Yeah.
did you learn
Well,
how to
no,
do that?
no. I did learn in Germany with a German dyer. She's very well known, but my memory is so bad. She's in Frankfurt. She's an older woman and she's very good. I also then learned not really dyeing, but printing with Pat Polly, an American artist, an excellent one. Um, and then I learned later on with Lee Higgins in the UK for breakdown printing. And again, I like that, but I do not have the space to do that, unfortunately. And I will
Yeah.
not have it because I'm not going to move to a bigger space.
Mhm. Yeah,
Finances don't allow.
I understand. Well, thank you so much. Those are my questions for you today, but I really appreciate you taking time to meet with us and give us kind of the backstory, a little bit more about you and where you're from, the process, and then now we just get to enjoy it. So thank you so much, and I appreciate you meeting with me today.
Okay, Lindy, thank you so much.